15. What time is it, Mickey?
It's 6:18.
Sorry, 6:18. On the 7th of July. And welcome to today's guest. It is Kevin Kline. There
Mark.
we go. And people can see you now. So we're live
okay.
on YouTube, Periscope. I don't know what Periscope is. This is what LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube again, Mixer. So the Microsoft platform. So someone said, "Why aren't you on the Microsoft platform?" And so I went, "Oh, okay, well, I'll do that." So Kevin, it's welcome to Geeks on Screen with Coffee. So here is your hub. Just making sure. There we go. Everybody gets one of these.
Outstanding.
And we will make sure the sound and vision is synced. You've got to do that, haven't you? So, how are you? And what are you drinking? Because obviously it's Geeks on Screen with Coffee.
Well, unfortunately, I'm just having a soft drink right now. I'd like to fortify that a little bit with some other beverages, but right now it's just a good old soda.
Okay.
Cheers.
But anything could be in the can. We don't know.
That's right. I'm keeping it a secret for right now. Yeah.
So
overall, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Not so productive. I think that's a struggle for all of us these days. Staying focused is sometimes a little bit tough. Ironically, in terms of measuring probably more productive than usual, but inside where it really counts, I feel like I'm struggling just with the grim news every day of the pandemic and all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that isn't going to go away quickly, and we're in for the long haul. If we thought we were in for a short haul, it isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But everyone with your family and stuff is all safe, and everyone is good.
Yes. Yeah. Thankfully, everyone is healthy. I like to joke around that in my big family, everyone is healthy. But since we're all living, not all of us, but my younger kids are still home, and they're in their late teens or early 20s. And so they're gradually reaching a homicidal level of stir crazy. They're like, somebody will walk in and just say, "Hi, how are you?" And somebody else will snap at them like, So yeah, it's funny.
So have people got their own territory? So if you go anywhere in the house, like to either go very, very quietly or loudly, so someone knows you're coming.
Exactly. That's a perfect description. And also, as someone is like on the back porch at sunset, the back porch at sunset is quite lovely. But if they're out there by themselves, that means it's not an open invitation. Don't join me. Give me a few moments to decompress. Yeah, that sort of thing. So it's good. On the other hand, 4 of my oldest kids are adults living on their own. And I say that like everybody has 4 kids and more, right? But my 4 oldest kids are, I'm the only person earning an income right now. Everybody else has been laid off or furloughed or, that sort of thing. So that's kind of distressing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm quite lucky because I'm still kind of working because I can pretend I'm working at home. And my wife is just at home anyway.
I'm curious.
As long as I'm sending emails. I mean, I've got this random email sender. It took me more time to work on to build, but I'll let you have a copy. But yeah, I've got a friend who's from previous companies, someone who was laid off at the beginning, and someone who's still furloughed. And it's quite tough for people.
And the uncertainty is probably the most difficult part. Yeah. So my eldest daughter's significant other, he works. We live in Nashville, Tennessee, which is a very big entertainment town, and he is a logistics planner for one of the country's largest entertainment equipment rental company. So, for example, here in the USA, one of our biggest sporting events of the year is the Super Bowl, and they have these enormous stacks of amplifiers and big stages and light. And his company does all of that. They rent all of those things, and no one's having giant concerts anymore. No one's having giant sporting events anymore. So he's laid off. And it's one of those things where it's what can you do? You can't really do anything.
No. I mean, I don't know how locked down Tennessee has been or has been over the last couple of months. So, I mean, the UK we were locked down very, very late. Then we're still in a lockdown period of children. I think young children have got some school time. My daughters have just started back at gymnastics, but it's outdoors and they're doing it in groups of 6. So nothing indoors. And I think the entertainment industry is just starting to open back up now. So theatres and things like that.
Okay.
But not for people going in. Just, I presume, for the actors and people to rehearse.
I see. Right. Yeah. It reminds me of some good times I had in London in the theatre district. Got to see Mamma Mia there, so that gets back on track. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's and so I did hear that someone in the UK is trying to do drive-in cinemas and drive-in events. And you go, that's just never taken off in the UK before. But it's something that when I think of America, I think drive-in cinemas, in my head, they're everywhere. But obviously, they're not.
Their heyday is long since gone. There used to be tens of thousands, but now there's only a few hundred left in the U.S. But fortunately for us, there's one about an hour north and one about an hour's drive south. And so it's certainly a doable thing, for a family to pile into the car and go see a night of movies at the drive-in. Yeah.
It seems perfect for lockdown.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of music acts that are also doing drive-in concerts too.
Oh, how does...
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, clearly, if you've got enough space, it's going to work.
The U.S. is a big place, and there's a lot of just large open fields where you could park 1,000 cars without a problem. And in fact, further south, there's usually about this time of year a really big outdoor concert called Bonnaroo that lasts a whole week. And, it's had headliners. I think last year or the year before it was Elton John. But it's 4 or 5 days of concerts. So everybody in the alternative scene, everybody in the maybe headliners in pop and hip hop and R&B and stuff like that. And 40,000 people go to this event. And, big deal. But in a place that's 2 hours south of Nashville, Tennessee, you have enormous open fields where you can host a big party of 30,000 people and their RVs and their cars and porta potties everywhere and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay. So are you locked down? What are just out of interest, what are the restrictions currently in Tennessee?
Tennessee had moved to what we call phase 3, where you could meet in bars and restaurants and things like that. And we had a resurgence. And so we've moved back down to phase 2. So they've started to shut down a lot of their bars and restaurants again. However, because our economy is so dependent on the hospitality trade and entertainment and so forth, I believe that quite a few of those restaurants and such, at least in downtown Nashville, are still open. So those who are cautious are very alarmed by it. Those who are a little more reckless are like, open everything, So there's a lot of arguments happening here in the States about that.
I think the public houses, the pubs, opened up at the weekend, and I think yesterday there were on the news that some of the pubs that opened up, there were cases of coronavirus. And there was things like the following day of lots of people in London all crammed together. And I guess it's almost a natural reaction of when you cram so many people together that they suddenly, when they go, "What, we can go out?" So, and I think there was a news headline saying drunk people don't social distance. And you're going, does it take a rocket scientist to work that one out? I mean,
exactly. It's like questions we don't have to ask. That would be number one on my list, right?
So, Kevin.
Yeah,
now,
so we're having the exact same thing.
So, I mean, this is all nice chit chat, but I got you on here for one reason, and it's because I've got a bone to pick with you.
Uh-oh.
Now, we normally meet up at SQL Bits, and they have these parties. And you are quite a one for dressing up. And I've got some pictures of you dressed up as Ghostbusters. And I think there were some other ones you went as. But there was one year, shall we say, it was a space theme.
Yes.
Now, I put, should we say, more effort than I would normally put in. Actually, no, I put a lot of effort. I thought I'd go with the alien theme. So I made a paper mache alien egg. And I bought an alien to go inside the egg. And also I made a costume that I had, it's Kane. So the John Hurt's character, is he gay, but chest.
Yes.
So I had
the chest burster, right?
Yeah. So, and I had a whole, basically a whole narrative where I came into the party with the egg. And there was someone actually dressed up as Ripley, one of the actresses. They have they go around, and so she was like, "Oh, cool, right?" So we went around for a bit, and I had my egg, and then at one point, the alien came out, and it was on my face. So for about 20 minutes, I walked around the party with, I can't see it. I had it here with the face hugger on, and then I then took it off, and then 20 minutes later, I then had the chest burster. And, it took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I thought I'm a shoo-in for the best costume. That is until, and you can't see this. Let's have a look. You won't be, if you've got the stream up, you'll be able to see this in a second. Now, I've got a nice picture of you in a dress, dressed as Princess Leia. And people can see that. Now, if I'd known all I needed to do was dress up as a woman, I could have just, not changed that. I could have just worn my wife's clothes. If that's all it took, a little bit of just dressing up. I mean, I do admire, the way that you went with the kind of the. You've got a copy of the picture somewhere, haven't you?
Yes, I do.
Probably up behind you somewhere as pride of place, I'm hoping.
Not quite, but it is something that I do keep handy in case anyone wants to know what this famous costume was that I was wearing that evening.
With a grey beard.
Yes.
Salt and pepper beard, not grey. Should we say salt and pepper? With the brown wig, with the swirly hair.
Yes.
Just to say I wasn't pleased, and I just have to get this off my chest, really. I think that's the I think I just have to let people know that how displeased I was when I saw you. Pleased and displeased.
Well, that for me, it took a different kind of preparation. Yours was, well thought out. You had a narrative, you executed on it. And in my case, my wife came in and said, "This is what you're wearing." And I said, "What's there?" And she said, "Well, your job is as an evangelist for the company that employs you. And so it's your duty to get attention and eyes on you in an event like this." And I said, "Hey, what a man does in the privacy of his own home is his business, but I'm not sure want to work in a big public venue? And she said, well, it's out of your hands. You're going to do it. So I very carefully dressed in the bathroom there. I don't know if you recall at other sequel bits, sometimes people would put on their costume at the hotel. It's a walk of shame, you know. I don't care how good your Buzz Lightyear costume is. People are looking at you like you're a bit odd, right? So I dressed in the bathroom and then came on over, and I came out of the bathroom and went straight in.
That I was going to ask where that was.
It might look like but I was a little bit.
Sorry, you were a little bit.
I think maybe.
Sorry, it's breaking up a little bit. That's why we're talking over each other. Sorry. When was that? Can you remember?
I think that's the Excel Center in maybe 2016 or 2017. And do you have a picture of your costume, your fancy dress?
I have. I might have some somewhere. I mean, I just ripped them up. I mean, once I saw you and you won, I just wanted to get rid of it and just wipe it from my memory, because
then punch me in the nose.
bad memories. Oh, if I'd known. So someone else who came there was another party, and he came as Super Ted in a big Super Ted outfit, and he walked back to his hotel, which wasn't close, and he walked across one of the bridges in London. And at the other end of the bridge, there was a police car waiting for him. Yeah, saying, "Are you okay, sir? Is there anything you do?" Yeah, I'm just going back to my hotel. He wasn't drunk or anything, but he said as he was walking over the bridge, he could hear, because it was obviously late at night, 1 or 2 in the morning. He said he could hear the CCTV cameras move, because you can just hear the motors go in them.
No
and
kidding.
So clearly someone had watched him go over the bridge, and yeah, I mean he didn't. They just went back to his hotel and stuff, but he wasn't brought in. But yeah, they probably had a good laugh at why Super Ted wandering.
Yes, there's some madman on the bridge.
Yeah.
Strutting around, going for a stroll in London. How about that?
I mean the last party.
Now, it's important to note too, Mark, that.
It's okay.
It's important to note that my colleagues did not let me select my own costume for the next 2 years. So, there was a little bit of blowback. They're like, "Don't embarrass us again."
But it was so good. I mean, you were the best. You were the best layer there, because there were other layers.
That's true. Yeah, 3 or 4 actually. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you beat them.
It was all in good fun. Yeah.
So sequel bits. Yes, it's circus theme for, or would be for the next, if it's going ahead. I don't know, so that's still the plan. The greatest data show on earth. That would be the next sequel bits. So I would be very interested to see you coming as a trapeze artist, maybe, or.
I had selected a lion tamer type costume. So with the top hat and the ring and the coat and tails.
Yeah.
We'll see if that holds up. Hopefully I'll get to use it at some point.
Oh, you've bought it?
I did. I bought it ahead of time.
I was hiring mine, so I had to go back to I had to do the whole thing of going to it was like some ex-army building in the outskirts of the village where I live, and you sort of just knock on the door. I mean, it looks derelict, and then there's just full of they do all the costumes for stage shows and theatre productions. So I was just in there, and it must have been about 8 or 9 degrees. What's that in? So that would be centigrade.
40 degrees Fahrenheit.
So and so kind of I was trying on the trousers and the shirt and stuff, and it was a bit cold.
I can imagine. Yeah, that's you're seeing your breath at that point.
Yeah. Well, the lady who was working there, so they had a little office. She did let me change in the little office, which had a couple of heaters in there.
Nice.
But yeah, I had to go back and say yes, they've cancelled it. Can I just move the date when I'm hiring it? But I was going on a similar theme to yours.
I do like that outfit you had one year where you were with your pith helmet and explorer and you eat chap hoppers.
Yeah, that was
that was quite fun.
That was the kind of first major sequel bits party where they just went massive. That was the steampunk party. That was
that's right.
Yeah, I'm not sure for me, I don't think they ever topped that.
That was just a whole lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was I don't know whether it was just the other parties had been big, they've been just as good, and I think it was just a surprise.
Yeah.
So I can't. What was your disco outfit?
Well, that was one of the years where I was, overruled. So it was just a, flashy neon shirt and circular glasses and I think I wore some kind of hat and bell bottoms. So just disco outfit.
I quite liked. I like it when companies do the theme. So when and I think it was Aaron were there as Ghostbusters. I can't remember who else came as Ghostbuster.
Well, it was Aaron and I, and then our. For those of you watching, Aaron is a renowned Microsoft MVP, and then our solutions engineer, senior most solutions engineer, Scott Fallon, he came as a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, God. One of those costumes that has a little fan in it, and so it inflates, and he's big and puffy, and it was great. Yeah.
Oh, that is so good, so good. Yeah.
That was the year that Daniel Radcliffe was there filming the movie. I think what was that movie? And so Chris Testa O'Neill hired one of the makeup artists to do him as Two-Face, where this side was really horrifically scarred, and it was Hollywood class makeup. It was great, really impressive.
That was the superhero one, and I think it was Catch Me If You Can too.
That's it. Catch Me If You Can too.
I think the keynote was on at the same time as they were filming, so we had to kind of have the doors shut and be quiet while kind of. I think Mark, I didn't see him, but only from seeing the film later on. They had Mark Ruffalo running in and banging on the doors, and there was a few other people. But yeah, I didn't get to see anyone or see anything good. It's a bit of a shame. But you did get a sneak behind the Hollywood Magic because they had it set up as a theatre inside, and you could see they had like cardboard people sitting in there up to a certain, so effectively, so they could have, and then obviously they just CGI'd people in.
There's all kinds of tricks like that they do. I was an extra in a film in the 80s, and I actually got positioned in a more prominent scene. But it was because I was tall and I needed to cover. They needed a tall person to cover all the cables that were hanging. So I got to stand in a part where when the camera panned by, you would see a person.
Whoa. Okay, stop this. You were an extra? I mean, I don't know anything about your acting career.
Yeah, it was a 1985 film called Space Camp. And they came to the town, the city that I lived in, Huntsville, Alabama, and I later worked at the NASA facility there. After I graduated from the they came there because there's a huge museum of rocketry and spacecraft called the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, and so they were filming scenes there. And so I answered the call for extras, and every now and then a family member or a friend will uh, dig through the film, find those scenes where you can see me in the background, and there's several that are pretty clearly a very early version of Kevin.
Oh, so I'm not prying, but I'm now on IMDb looking at some of the pictures. I can't see. Was it an indoor scene or outdoor scene?
I was in both. But you won't be able to see me in any of the pictures.
Oh,
My brother actually has it tagged as to exactly what a couple scenes where 8 minutes and 37 seconds into the film. So I'll have to dig that up and find out when those times were. Yeah.
so was that the? How many other times have you been a movie star?
Never again after that. Yeah. So that was my one shot at fame.
Oh, and you didn't get the bug then?
Well, I did community theater, both before and after. But once you start working and you have a family, a lot of that stuff is hard to keep up with. So, and coincidentally, I was when I completed university, I had gotten I had been accepted into a master's program at the university there for artificial intelligence, very early versions of artificial intelligence. And I was examining the course requirements to complete the degree, and it was a 2-year master's degree program. And I saw that you could finish 6 months early if you wrote a master's thesis. And I'm willing to work harder if I can finish sooner, right? So I said, yeah, that's what I'll do. And I was employed at the time. I was full-time working. And so I wrote my master's thesis outline, kind of a detailed table of contents and abstract. And at the same time, I was flipping through a popular magazine of the day, which I think is still around as a website called Datamation. And in the back, they had a advertisement calling for authors. Datamation series of books is coming out. And so just on a whim, I printed out the abstract and outline of the thesis, and I filled out their form and mailed it in. And a couple weeks later, I got a letter back saying, yeah, we'd love to publish a book on this. So that was how I wrote my first book and never did finish the master's degree. So, yeah.
But that's
that's how I got non-character mode development.
I guess it was that sort of. I guess there's more prestige in being an author.
Yeah, and probably within a few months, the publication possibly started a job search, and it absolutely brought as much value to the salary negotiations as having a master's degree and then some. So yeah, that was serendipity, but it was it broke in my favor in that case.
I've always aspired. I thought it would be really nice to actually write a book or be an author, because then you feel that you've kind of I don't know, not necessarily for me, but my parents could go, oh look, there's actually something real I can actually see, rather than this,
right?
As in, I work inside computers. I work in computers, and I work, I shrink down, I work inside them all day, I then come back out, and I then expand back to full size. Like,
right.
What's the movie? The something Journey? Where they
Incredible Journey.
That's where they shrink the submarine down, and they go through the guy's arteries, and that's how I imagine that's how I go to work every day, and that's what I do. So to actually have something go, look, he's an author. Look, that's his name on a book. You can send it to them. They go, oh look, he's made it. Even if it's I'm sorry, I interrupted. No. Go on.
I always say I love having written a book, but I hate writing books. So, and that really crystallized for me when the first time I and my kids were in a big bookstore, bundles here in the U.S., and my kids ran over to the bookshelf and they're like, "Daddy, here's your book," and that was great. That felt awesome. But writing books is really miserable. It's hard work. It's for me, it would be psychologically you to dig a very large ditch, because it's very lonely work. You're working alone. You're doing it for many hours on end, so you have to stay really focused. But you have to remain connected to your family. So it's a situation in which, in my case, it wasn't a hard sacrifice. You have to give up something, though. And in my case, I just gave up entertainment. So when I first started to write, it was in the early 90s. People would ask, "Hey, you remember this and such show that was so popular on TV for?" And I'm like, "Nope, never saw an episode." I mean, it was probably on, and I had a laptop in my lap, but I was not focused on that kind of stuff at all.
So are you still writing books?
That's how I there was a pretty long gap of a couple years where I hadn't, but I actually just signed up with a couple of co-authors, and we're going to do a new edition of SQL in a Nutshell. So I'm very excited about that. That'll be our 4th edition, and it's planned to come out the first of the year. So in 2021, we'll have a new edition of that, and I'm really stoked about it.
Oh, fabulous!
Yeah.
So I can share this because nothing's happening. So I was approached by one of the people who work for one of the publishing houses, saying they'd like to, if I was interested in working on a book for Synapse.
Oh, nice, yeah.
And it's like, and I went, yeah, okay. And I went, okay. And then I went to one of my friends and said, I saw on LinkedIn that they were connected to one of my friends who I work with, who works in the same team. And I said, has this guy contacted you about doing a book? And he went, yeah. And I said, no. Okay. And then I went to someone else in my team and I said, has this guy contacted you about writing a book? And he went, yeah. I'm so low down on the list. That's what I got out of that. I'm like,
so it was an ego boost for a moment, and then you're like,
yeah,
sure.
I was up here, and then suddenly I mean, all those people that I don't know that he must have tried, there'll be hundreds, but even the people in my small group of friends, he's already been through those and worked his way through, and they all said no. But I was questioning because I wasn't sure whether books are maybe sequel, because how it doesn't change, the core language doesn't change significantly over time. New features get added, and that's why you need to update the book. But for things like Synapse and cloud-based things, it almost feels like, is a book the right medium? Should it be video and blogs? Is that where you should be going?
Yeah, it changes frequently. In fact, I have a rant percolating inside of my brain that I want to put out in probably a broader channel than just my blog. Maybe I'll put it on LinkedIn. But the gist of it is pointed at companies like Google and Amazon and so forth about your paradigm for design of your products is wrong. Okay. So, for example, one of the reasons I stopped doing a lot of Azure sessions, Azure SQL Database and Azure SQL Database Managed Instance and such, was I could be writing a presentation this week, go through everything on, let's say, Thursday, check all my demos, everything's great. Present on Friday morning, and it breaks. Or alternately, a choice on a menu isn't there anymore, but I have to find it somewhere else, on some other part of the Azure portal or something like that. And, I understand what's going on from the point of view of the product managers, in that they're like, okay, we have to redistribute the cognitive load So it's more logical, this thing over here than over there. And then our user experience people watched a bunch of customers or prospects use the product. And so they felt like, it'd be better to have this in a different place than in another place because the friction to learn the interfaces. But again, my point is that that's the wrong attitude to go into this. They go into it each time as if it's a fresh slate, right? And we've cleaned the blackboard and we're starting over from scratch. The right attitude is you have learned how to drive an automobile. Okay. Now, instead of having your shifter on the floor, we've decided to put it on the steering column. And 2 releases from now, we've decided that rather than having, we're going to give you 2 joysticks like are in a construction vehicle where you're doing things like that. So every time people who already know how to drive that vehicle get in, there is an enormous obstacle for them to overcome and be productive again. That's my rant. Let's talk about the longevity of these different products. And of course, there's a counter argument. We don't intend for this user interface to last for 15 years. We intend for it to last 4 years, something like that. But again, I'm not sure if I agree with that answer, So that's my current rant right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair enough that used to be one of the people's bugbears in Word and things they use, and stuff would disappear and menu items would change and kind of,
right.
I used to, I could do stuff and now it takes me twice as long because I'm having to relearn everything. But I guess from a design point of view, if you put it in the wrong place 5 years ago, you probably want to update that. So do you wait for a major change? I mean, any change people are going to dislike. You're always going to have a certain percent of people that don't like any change. And then there's certain people that want constant change. And is it just the group in the middle? It's, and I guess who are you targeting? Because I've talked to my parents and my father-in-law when he was alive, and he would say, why did Google keep changing my email or Hotmail? Why did Hotmail keep changing my email? And he'd be like, well, it's not your email.
Yes, you've got a great point.
You aren't paying for it. It is someone else's service, and they're trying to do updates and make stuff better, and they're trying. And now it may not work, and it may make it harder. But yeah, I guess it's different if you pay hundreds of thousands of pounds for software, which I don't do. But if you're buying,
I wouldn't if I could.
If you're buying expensive video editing software, then that's expensive. There still must be expensive software out there.
Oh yeah,
yeah. They can't keep changing that. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's interesting because I've seen it from both sides.
Yeah, and I know that's one of the fun things about it, that doesn't necessarily mean there's an easy solution there, or that your ideas of how to change things are right, or even in the ballpark of being right. Yeah. And so, at least in my case, when I read someone else's rant and I'm like, that was fun, it's because they express a lot of just the humanity of the situation, right? Here's what I'm struggling with. And I might not say, that's my struggle too. I might not say that, but I am probably going to say, I've had a corollary kind of struggle, and I've struggled in this way, maybe not the same thing you're talking about, but yeah, I've been there. And so I like to kind of, it's like when you're having a friendly debate with someone, and so I like to kind of put myself in their shoes and think about it. And then, does this work for me or not? Stuff like that.
Yeah, it's always fun to try and see it from the other angle, because I've only got my experience, and that doesn't mean that I'm right. It just means that in my head, this is what I know. But if I'm not open to listen to other people's views and other people's arguments, I can't. You familiar with Alex Yates? He did something. He put some post up on Twitter, and he was saying, "Can someone help me do something?" So a designer to do some work on a website, and then kind of, I can't. And there was a bit of backlash or something because he was effectively asking a designer to do some work for nothing, and that's not how.
Free consulting.
And that's not how they work. That may be how people in our community might do stuff for free and help each other out. But to then expect someone to give their work away, but because he wasn't thinking about it from their point of view and their shoes, it was quite a legitimate and honest question. It wasn't. He wasn't being trying to be rude. But when someone did educate him, he went, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean. Now I understand, and we can move on."
Right.
Yeah. So there's a. It's I don't know whether it's just whether I've got older. I've got more opinionated and less opinionated at the same time.
Same for me. Yeah, I am very picky about which hills I choose to die on. So some are worth it, but most aren't. So I just move on.
Yes, I do remember having a long argument over whether a struct was better in C or whether a type. Oh, we spent hours. And then, but now I'm thinking, that was such a waste of time. We didn't get anywhere.
Yep. A friend of mine was once telling me that he was looking at getting a new job. And I was like, well, you've only been in this job for maybe 2 years? And he said, yeah, but here's how I think about jobs. And with my particular set of skills, I can go at any day of the week, and with a few weeks of interviewing, I can find a job that pays as well better. So because of that, this is the context I live in. Because of that, if I'm working a job where the stupidity gets too big, I think to myself, is it going to be worth it for me to spend another 2 years here fixing all of this stupidity, or would it be easier for me go to a new place? The stupidity is there. So I thought, it's a pretty interesting way to look at it. And he's still very successfully and happily living with that strategy today. So, all right.
Yeah, I think my opinion of jobs and stuff has changed. And I don't know whether that's just being an old git, but I think this is my one job. But the company I work for, they have lots of jobs. So I need to be very picky about the job that I do, and if there is a level of stupidity or frustration that I can't get over, well, then I'll look for another job, because there's no point living with a job that's terrible. But I think that's is that just a privileged position to be in, and I think that
it is, but it's not a bad privilege, right?
Yeah,
and it's even if the job isn't too difficult. Even if the job, but you work in a very large corporation or you have opportunities, then I say knock yourself out. There's no reason not to find the next better thing. Back when I did work in large corporations, I probably changed jobs every 2 or 3 years. Looked on my CV that I had a 7-year tenure at this company, but I worked 3 or 4 jobs while I was there. So, yeah, keep it fresh.
Yeah, I think I looked at Buck Woody's he's had a very similar sort of type of career. When I think he came to Microsoft, every so often he's looking for a new challenge. Once you become comfortable, well, maybe it's time to move on. Yeah, but he's I'm sorry. Go on. And it depends on what's a little bit on what's gratifying to you. So, Buck and he enjoys teaching a lot, and so in some cases, once the position is easy for him, he still gets a lot of gratification out of teaching the principles that he's learned and so forth. So, and I can't, of course, speak for him, but
what I do know of Buck is that sometimes he's like, well, I could do this for a bit longer because I now have a different aspect of my own personality. Instead of learning new stuff, now I'm teaching new stuff. And that is something that I do enjoy. So, it depends a bit on your personality too.
Right. We've been talking for kind of almost, privately almost an hour, but publicly probably at least 45 minutes or so. And I haven't asked you any of my stupid questions, emergency questions.
All right. So, let's pull one of those out.
All right. I'm gonna go back in time. All right. Actually, I'm gonna do this question because I think you might appreciate it. What's your favourite episode of Geeks on Screens? So this podcast, this video thing from season 1.
Didn't we talk together just a few months ago?
All right, no,
that would be it.
Yes. Okay. So I've got a standard question. I'm going to roll out an old question as well. What's your favourite cheese?
My favorite cheese. Well, let me first explain that I could wax poetic with misty eyes like I'm remembering an old lover when it comes to cheese. I am a fan of cheese. I think if there was a big cheese board arranged in front of us and a host said, Mark, Kevin, have whatever you like here on the cheese board, I would probably naturally gravitate towards, if they had it, long-term Gouda. So a Dutch cheese, it's spelled Gouda, but it may be pronounced differently, Gouda or Gouda, and it's as it ages beyond 2 years, it is very firm. It's almost a wax, like a candle wax consistency, but something special happens inside of it in which the salt crystallizes. So as you're nomming on the cheese, there occasionally comes a little crunch into something like almost rock-like, and that's the salt, and it sends fireworks through my synapses in my brain. So I just love these good aged Goudas.
Oh wow! All right, so it's a really silly, stupid question, which I stole off of someone else. I mean, I would give Michael credit, but I can't be asked. But it people have so many good responses to it. So I was asking everyone in season 1 what that was, and I sort of put a montage together. And after about 5 people, and kind of it went on for about 20 minutes, of people just waxing lyrical, and that was just 5 people. And I've talked to about 30 something people, 38 people,
30 something people. Yeah.
I can't remember which number we are. And everybody's got a long story about cheese.
Isn't that something?
Who would talk about cheese?
Here's a digression about trees.
Oh, go on, shoot.
So when I was a wee lad, an Indian family moved in down the street from me, and one of the elder sons in the 20s made friends with our family, and he'd come over and visit sometimes. And my mom asked him, and I was probably 12 at the time, and my mom asked him, what was one of the more surprising things you experienced when you came here to the U.S. for the first time? And I really excited. He says, well, I was so excited to try a cheeseburger for the first time. And we're like, well, there's really not in the USA, we don't consider that to be a novelty. He said, well, in my experience back home in India, all cheeses were like a cheese. They're wet. No firm cheeses in his upbringing. So I wanted to know how you could put cheese onto a hamburger and make it stay. And we were like, that's just a tiny story, but a kind of a macrocosm of how cool it is to be able to travel and learn how people do other things. Because in your own experience, it just doesn't seem like it could work.
Yeah. Well, if I didn't know anything about cheeseburgers, I'd be going, there's not a lot of cheese in a cheeseburger, is there?
That's right.
I mean, it's for what is 50% of the name of the item. It is relatively a small amount of cheese, significant amount of bun, mostly meat. Well, mostly bun, I would have thought.
The proportion is not very great, right?
Yeah. All right.
One slim layer.
I could not get obviously when I was young, maybe I was just a bit too literal. I could not get my head around a hamburger because there was no ham in it.
That's right. Yeah, I remember grappling with that as well. That's when I realized that words have multiple layers of meaning and origin.
Is that hamburger as in Hamburg? Or was it...
Right. That's my understanding.
And freedom fries, which I think were an American thing because they didn't want to call them French fries.
They were annoyed with the French. Yeah, those people. Uh-huh. I mean, and of course, it's a great irony there, though, because they're actually Asian. So,
Well, the most iconic statue in America was from the French. Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, the what you would imagine as the iconic kind of immigrants or being welcomed, the thing that welcomes everyone to America is obviously the Statue of Liberty, and that's what you think about, and that is iconic and represents the states. Or did when I was younger. I don't remember seeing it being, I guess, touted as much now, but not so much in popular media, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are political forces that are working to make America immigrant unfriendly. That's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and we have the same forces here. And the thing you go is, well, is anybody native in reality? No.
No, exactly.
And if you go back 40,000 years, the human race all started in one particular place coming out of... I think stuff has changed over time. The amount of... essentially, we all started from somewhere like the Rift Valley, tribes that came out there originally and then spread all around Europe and all around the world, and different tribes left at different times. And I think that theory has changed over time because they're using DNA to track that. And you go, well, we all came from the same place. Mm-hmm. I mean, and if you open us up, we're all the same inside.
That's true. There's not a difference in there.
No. And it's what makes us actually interesting is where we come from and our cultural background and where we grew up, and why you've got an American accent. That's if we didn't have video on, I wouldn't know what you look like. All I know is your accent. And you find that if you go to London, and you walk around, you close your eyes, you wouldn't know where you were, and you wouldn't know who you were speaking to or where they were from.
Indeed. Right.
Yeah, it's so I had a theory that was the only way I could try and work out what people's background is from their accent, because of it's quite, although you can change it over time and you can adjust it, people generally don't. So you grew up on the west side of London or the east side or the south side because of slight twangs and but you couldn't tell or anything else about people. Right.
Or if you're speaking Scouse, there was the sequel bits in Liverpool. And I was behind two young women at one of the cash machines to get some cash, and they were chatting quite loudly with each other. And I thought they were Polish. There's a lot of Polish immigrants on the British Isles. A little bit more carefully, I began to realize, holy crap, that is a English-like language. What is that? I talked to some of my friends from the area, and they're like, "Oh, you've met some Scousers, is what you've done." I was like, "Holy smoke!" Never heard it in the flesh there until that very day.
I mean, even when you live here, you'll be shocked at some of the accents. I was in a shop in Glasgow with Rob Sewell, and it was just popping in
Yeah.
there getting something, and could not. I mean, some guy was talking to us, being really nice, kind of. I mean, I couldn't tell if he was drunk, but he was Glaswegian. That's all I could work out.
Yes.
And you know that. I mean, that's an accent. You don't mess with anyone with that accent, because no.
Mm-mm.
And it's just like, yeah. And he's just talking to me. Yeah, okay. Do you know what he said? No. All right, just keep walking. Keep walking. So, all right, I'm going to ask you.
And that's an interesting thing here in the States as well, is that some families, I grew up in the Deep South, and some families, like myself, my parents were very conscientious to correct me anytime I had a Southernism creep into my language. They're like, you need to sound like a broadcaster on television. Right. But on the other hand, you go 3 doors down in your neighborhood, and the kid you're playing with is like, hey, y'all want to go play? I can just run up the stairs and get my football. We'll go play for a while, and it's an entirely different way of talking. So, yeah, it's funny stuff.
So we have the same. It's not so bad now, but there was a whole thing in the UK where you couldn't be on television if you had an accent.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it had to be RP. What is it? Something pronunciation, received pronunciation, the Queen's English, where you had to be very, very precise, and the BBC English was the other term for it.
Right.
But if you had a slight accent, you'd be seen as not as intelligent, or
exactly.
And so you couldn't do.
That's what my dad always said.
Yeah, because that's what people make their first impressions, and if you've got a southern drawl, people will underestimate you, perhaps.
Exactly.
And that may work to your advantage, but it also may be a disadvantage.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know whether things are so bad now. Do people judge each other?
If it's marginal, if it's a little bit, then they don't. But if it's really strong, then you'll get judged.
Yeah, I guess. It's a bit. I guess that will change over time, but it's. Yeah. It's right. I better get some questions done. Right, I'm going to get you to do so. So season 2, I was asking everybody, what was your favorite album?
Oh boy, that's such. I'm a big music fan, and I also am a very heavy listener to music. So I don't, listen to the 80s music that I once did, whereas I have other friends who are like, they can't stop playing Journey and Don't Stop Believing, right? Or, or the Rolling Stones or what have you. So I'm going to give you 2 answers. I'll say my, which is a little bit tough. It's really a choice between several different albums, and then my favorite recent album. So my favorite of all time, probably 2006 Green Day, American Idiot. For me, that had extremely high production values, and it really caused a big social awakening in the USA. A lot of people are like, wow, rock can be political again, right? But of course I also love the music, and I like Green Day's aesthetic. Let's see, one of my more recent albums that I really like is, again, there's so many, but I'll go with a band called Paris, and it's spelled PV instead of an A. It's PVRIS, and they had a few years ago they released an album called White Noise, and I really liked it. I really enjoy female vocalists who can bring the thunder, and so their lead singer Lynn Gunn was just belting out some good old fashioned rock and roll. Okay. It was a lot of fun.
I was going to ask what kind of genre that was, because I hadn't heard of it.
I listen. Yeah, they're alternative rock is their label, their category here in the States. But I do listen to a lot of EDM and a lot of metal and a lot of country, so I'm all over the map.
It's a broad church. You can listen to, I sometimes I have this conversation. So my children ignore me, clearly. I mean, like most people. But when they listen to something and I say, "Oh, well, if you like that, then maybe you should listen to this because that was clearly inspired by, well, that dance music there is, it's actually very much a bit like Fatboy Slim or a bit of Faithless."
Sure.
And then that is like something else, and that takes, it's, if you go with someone like Fatboy Slim, Norman Cook, you go from there, you go to, what was he in? Well, back to the House Martins.
Right.
And Caravan of Love and kind of other, many, many years ago. And they had some, I can't remember what the name of the band was. They had a song called Dub Be Good to Me. It was 90s music. But that sort of family tree, I think there have been some programs on it. I really like,
I had just that experience with my youngest daughter, who's 17 now. And one evening we watched a documentary on the Eagles, who are one of my favorite bands of all times. And she really liked their music. So I start seeing on her Spotify playlist all kinds of Eagles music. And then, a week later she comes down and she's like, "Have you guys ever heard of Linda Ronstadt?" We're like, "Holy smokes, Linda Ronstadt, was the bomb." And then she goes away for a while. She comes back. It's like, I never heard of them before. Fleetwood Mac. Do you know them? And we're like, only one of the best bands of all times, So, but it was fun too because she would say, "Who else is out there?" And we could say, "Oh, well, Jackson Browne was a contemporary of theirs, and this artist and that artist." So, it was really fun to bond over that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, I haven't really had kind of, because my children just ignored me. We haven't really had that experience yet. So maybe, every time I play them something, I played them a whole load of 80s music. It was a Saturday morning and I took control and I just danced around next to them while they were on TikTok or whatever, just to wind them up. Playing different things. I don't know, a bit like Journey.
Sure.
I played, was it Pat Benatar? There was a few things, Bonnie Tyler.
Oh, yeah.
My daughter likes a good bit of Bonnie Tyler now from Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Yes.
Although it's a very weird video. I don't know.
It is, yeah. Don't go the video route on a lot of this stuff.
No. All right, we're going to finish up on two questions. One is who to nominate next, but first we're going to do the Richard Herring emergency question. So this is a book by a comedian that pretty much no one I've talked to has ever heard of. And he has a book of 1001 emergency questions. So you pick a number between 1 and 1001 and we'll see how it goes.
Let's go with 426.
Any reason why 426?
Well, because I'm looking at TweetDeck, and I see that the last time a certain friend of mine messaged me directly was on 426. So that's why I chose it.
Okay. What's the most lamented thing you've ever had stolen from you?
Now this is a real lamentable thing. So my dad was very into genealogy, and so and very much a keeper of heirlooms. And I over the weekend I was cleaning out one of my storage boxes, which I shouldn't have here in my office, and I was looking at the discharge papers from my ancestor who fought in the Civil War. So it was in the beautiful, kind of dipped ink pen kind of writing and released and so forth, and he earned a pension. But that ancestor left to my family 2 sabers from the Civil War, a dress saber and a field saber, and 2 rifles. Well, one was a rifle and one was a shotgun. And in 2008, my house was broken vacation, and all of those things were stolen from me.
Oh no.
Yeah, so the sabers were Civil War. The shotgun and rifle were shortly after the 1870s or so. So this would be like if you had remnants of your ancestors, artifacts from the Crimean War, and then someone stole them from you. That really hurt. I went and researched, and it turns out they're not terribly expensive to buy. Civil War weapon, saber. It's been in the thousands of dollars, but still, the rifle, for example, had a silver medallion in the stock, and it had the name of the craftsman who had cleaned it, and he would put the date every time he did, and so you could see a little bit of its pedigree there. And so it was just really neat, it was part of the family kind of thing. So that one was very lamented, that loss.
It must be quite hard to then sell that on. Because it's so unique, especially when you've got dates and things engraved on it. So
yeah. So yes and no. So us as data people can immediately begin to think of different ways that we would use to acquire the information for where this artifact went. The problem is the police don't care about that. So even though we were searching diligently ourselves on all the different websites to see if we could find that stuff, there was no really concentrated effort to find those things. So if you just go to some kind of fan web page or website that has a discussion forum, you could sell that stuff. Sad but true.
That's really God, that's do you know what? That's a really downer way to end the chat.
So I had this 3-year-old Gouda, and one of my kids ate it, and I very much lamented. They got my beloved Gouda.
All right, I like this question. So I recently replaced the phone screen and battery on an iPhone. So when was the last time you were amazed by your own brilliance?
Oh my goodness. I'm so much more amazed by my own idiocy than I am my own brilliance. It's like, oh my God, how could I do that? That's the dumbest thing ever. What was I thinking? I'll give you a simple one, and it's one that shows up a lot in my Facebook stream. So I am into gardening, and so every month I go to the same 2 places in the yard, and I take a picture of my flower gardens in front of my house. My intention would be to, over time of the garden. And the reason this impressed me with my own brilliance, and I'm kind of misstating it, I'm always pleased and surprised to see what happens and that it works out so well. Partly because I'm colorblind, but so what is really exciting for me is that something I started working on 2 years ago in earnest is now coming to fruition, and in beautiful kind of coruscating and undulating colors that change from month to month. And so right now the black-eyed Susans and the hydrangeas are blooming, but before that it was the fuchsias and the hyacinths, and then before that it was the crocus and the tulips. And so for me, it's like a musical composition in very slow motion. And so I always have different things blooming, and then they subside. And the way I've planned it and planted it is there's different heights and textures and colors and things. And so for me, it brings me great pleasure to see what the heck's going to work. And sometimes there's some horrible disasters. So it keeps me humble and reminds me that this is not a sure thing.
I was going to ask, I didn't know whether to ask about your special glasses, because you've got some glasses that reverse or alter the color blindness.
Yes, that's right. They're called Enchroma is the brand. And I still they're my official sunglasses. And so I wear them out in the yard all the time, or as we travel around and it's sunny. And my family just recently posted a couple videos from when I first put them on, like 3 years ago, because they were given to me for Father's Day, and Father's Day just passed a little while ago here in the States. And so they put up a video the first time I ever saw fireworks with a full spectrum of colors. And if you ever want to see a grown man cry with that video, because I mean, it was astonishing. Yeah. And it's funny too, because I'm not thinking much about colors, and then I put them on, and my wife and I are driving somewhere, and she's driving, and I'm like, oh my God, look at that red truck. And she's, well, yeah, they're like, it's just leaping out at you. Or there's a big billboard up, and it's a cosmetics commercial, and the woman's putting on red lipstick, and I'm like, that is a provocation right there. She's like, well, I'm kind of used to red lipstick, but you're right. That, is intended to draw your eye. It's right there too. But for me, it's just so unexpected and unusual that I can't help but be gobsmacked, when I see a red stop sign or something.
That must, I guess, that must physically change how you view the world. If you see stuff effectively through a whole different lens.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
I hadn't really thought about.
And it's funny
about it. Sorry, go on.
Even in things like a little game on your phone, and so I don't often wear sunglasses in the house, but every now and then I'm like, I'm going to play this new game I've downloaded, and I want to see what the real colors are. And I'm like, good gosh, this is like exploding with colors, right? And my wife's like, yeah, what does it look like to you? And I'm like, well, it's tan and brown and, various shades of that. And she's like, that is so boring. I'm like, yeah, that's why I think I can stop playing a game. A lot of the kids, they just can't stop. It's so exciting.
Yeah, I guess your endorphin levels must be very different if you're not being kind of visually stimulated in the same way as everyone else. That may even just, I guess, partly affect how you've developed. I mean, because
I would think so. Yeah.
And then obviously,
like
not in a bad way. But other things make up for it.
It's definitely had an impact for sure. Like, I never consider myself squeamish in watching something like that. And my wife was like turning away, and I was like, it's not that bad. And she said, put your glasses on. And I put my glasses on, replayed the scene, and I'm like, holy smokes, there's blood everywhere. And she's like, yes, and it's like flying at you at the screen, and, things over my head. I didn't even notice.
So do you then, I guess, you don't wear them all the time, so then are there particular times when you choose to wear them then?
Mm-hmm.
So wearing them at the SQL Bits party must be kind of, if you bring them along, it will be amazing.
Yes, and what I really need to do is they have two models. The one my family bought for me were sunglasses. So if we're in a big darkened room like many of those parties are, I would trip over my own feet.
Yeah.
But I could see the color, computer or indoor glasses, and I need to go ahead and spring for those. They have a little bit of tinting, so they're a little bit dark, but not like the real sunglasses are. So that's what I need, because I'd love to be able to wear them inside and see all the same colors too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my eyesight has started to get worse, so I need glasses for reading, and
sure,
it's a pain to just I'm at that point of, I know I can't read it, but I don't, I'm having to now actually put the glasses on because it's too much effort not to be able to read it and just guess. Oh, those ingredients. So, yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah, that sell by date. No, it'll be good.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought it said 6 ounces of fennel, not flour. Very different recipe.
That's 60 ounces or 6. I can't. Oh, never mind. It'll be fine.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I've taken your time, so much of your time up. So firstly, where can people come and get more Kevin? So you're doing any presentations, any things coming up?
Yes, indeed. So I'm doing webinars on almost a weekly basis now. So SentryOne.com/events, and you'll see all. And there's quite a few in the future. I also put out an offer, and in case anyone who's listening might be in this position, if you are a user group leader or an association leader, and you'd like to have a speaker like me, I've been, volunteering that for anybody who is interested, since we're all kind of cooped up under the pandemic. And so I have one this week for the Phoenix, Arizona user group, SQL Server user group, and then Lansing, Michigan later in the week, and then Orange County, California next week. So I've got 3 pretty in-depth coming up just in the next 7 days.
Are they publicly open? As in, are they going to be broadcast so anyone can join in?
Typically, yes. You would probably have to go to like their meetup page, and then it gives you the details for how to connect. But it's all available to be watched online. And
are they kind of recorded then, or?
It just depends. What I typically do when a user group leader contacts me is I kind of have, great email presentations. Choose any of those you want, or if you're interested, I have lots of other topics I've delivered, so we can talk about something else too. So in many cases, it turns out that they've already been recorded and placed on our website, SentryOne.com.
I was talking with some user group leaders about the challenge of if you record it, do less people turn up to your event to watch it live? And the answer is yes. Because without being in, so if they were there and they could do a Q&A with you and they can ask you questions, some people will jump at that. I jump at that to get some Kevin time. Which is what you would get if you went to a real user group and you were there in person. Exactly. You can come up and say hello to you, and I can bore you to death with stories, and then you can pretend to be interested and then sort of slope off. Oh, I've got to get somewhere.
Yeah, someone is calling. Huh?
You've done it before. Okay. So I've just so some of them, they don't record them to make sure people turn up. And others are kind of very much like, we'll record it and keep it forever. But you guys have got your stuff recorded professionally. They're very kind of stock standard, and this is it. You want you for the nuance. You want you for the detail and the value add and kind of your personal experience. That's why it's good to get you in person.
Thank you. Yeah, and I always prefer to connect with a live audience as well. Yeah, that's always very good.
Yeah. You could. Yeah, I mean, you are a consummate professional, so I'm sure there's no problem with presenting to remote presentations where people don't respond, because you'll carry on through that.
I'm used to it,
yeah. It's quite hard to get used to that when you're used to an audience. Yes. I struggled with that. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, it is only because of experience, having done this many times, that when I don't hear questions, my usual go-to in a situation like, pause and say, are there any questions? And you don't hear anything. My usual response would be to say something along the lines of, what I often hear people ask at this point is ... And so then it almost feels extemporary for the listeners, for the viewers. In fact, no one actually did ask a question. It's just that I've done this enough that people have asked questions at that point each time. So that's one of the few things that I can say experiences definitely help with. It's knowing where people will laugh, knowing where people will, think this is weird and need more explanation or what.
Yeah. If you haven't got that facial expression at the other end going, then it's sometimes hard to know whether you've lost them, whether they're with you, or whether you even care. Sometimes we're going to get through this. Right? Come with me if you can.
Keep up. Don't. It's up to you.
Yeah. So the final question is, who would you like to nominate? You can either do it privately or publicly. I don't mind. Who do you think would enjoy a chat with me? Or more importantly, who would I enjoy talking to?
Okay. And I think you may know this person, but I'm going to nominate Julie Coas-Morno. I don't know if you know Julie. She was a longtime MVP, and now she works for Microsoft in Redmond. She's part of the team, the tools team. So lately she's been doing a lot of amazing sessions on things like Jupyter or Azure notebooks, stuff like that. But Julie's brilliant and a great representative for women in technology, for people. So you'll have an enormous number of topics to discuss, from everything like diversity and inclusion to all of the technologies that she's so good at, to maybe what it's like to have grown up in Indonesia for a while and then in Australia for a while. I mean, she's been all over the globe. So
okay, all right.
Yeah, a lot of neat that the two of you could have a conversation about. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We're going to need more than an hour, aren't we? We can split them up. So I've about there's about 10 other questions, so we could keep going for another hour, Kevin. But I think my dog needs a walk. So what we'll do is get you back again.
Yeah, Mark, I always enjoy our time together, so that would be super. I'd really enjoy that. Yeah.
You make it sound like we've been in prison together. And
it can be a prison sometimes, so it's always good to connect as human beings, and just share a pint, and and you and I are of a similar age, so we know each other's burdens and things like that. So it's always good to have a conversation with you. It
is, and thank you for your time, because I know you're busy and this is your working day. So
yes,
yeah, you may have other things. It doesn't say tires. It says fires. Sorry, stop in the background. Stop fighting database fires. Sorry, I thought I would do a little quick before we go. Was that SentryOne? The monitoring software.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Just.
Thank you for the plug.
And if I mean you've got the shirt on. I didn't want to mention that, but clearly, they're giving you a bit of time, and we should always get a bit of love to the people we work for.
Yeah, and I feel lucky. I'm sure you do too, to work for a good company in a good time. So thank you for that.
All right, lovely. All right, well, thank you for your time, Kevin, and I'll see you soon. Say bye, everyone. Bye.